Hi, I'm Kyriakos Gold, and this is Autistic Pride Day Symposium in Melbourne. We are going to talk about autistic-led solutions for autistic people, and this session has a technology focus. Join me. What is this space? What is Autistic-Led? What is autism tech? What are the first thoughts that came to your mind when I asked you to be in this panel?
So many questions. Thank you. So Autism Tech is really technology for the autistic community of 75 million people, probably greater than that worldwide. Autistic-Led is really putting autistic entrepreneurs at the heart of leading those technology and other solutions for the autistic community. And the relevance of that and why we care about Autistic-Led is really that the user-centered design is everything. So I like to give the example with regard to sort of women entrepreneurs, for example, as one kind of subcategory, that their bodies were not included in clinical medical trials until the 1990s. When it comes to autistic bodies, I'm pretty sure we're still not being included, you know, by and large in medical clinical trials. And that is one very narrow, you know, example of how user-led design or co-design is so vitally important, so that our lived experience gets injected into the solutions that are being designed, so that it actually meets the needs of the community.
You know, if you ever need a career in television.
I got a plan B.
You got a plan B. Michelle, I'm going to start with you for many reasons. The primary reason is because you were with us last year, and we talked about your app, which I want you to reintroduce, but I also want you to tell us what has been the journey last year. And if anyone's interested, just go back to last year's video as well to see where we were then.
Where we were. Yeah, I even forget where we were then. So Kaboose is a community app designed by myself and the community for the neurodivergent individuals to find friends, eventually mentors and jobs. And it's been a slow sort of journey because we haven't had funding. So the session earlier that talked about funding, but I'm pleased to say we've got almost 5,000 people using Kaboose now globally, and we're starting to see some really cool traction. Talking about my TikTok videos that are getting quite a few views. So yeah, so we've come a long way.
Quite a few is 2.9 million views for her last TikTok video.
So that's pretty cool.
So do you think that that's a watershed moment for you, or is it because you know how TikTok, you can get a viral video, then nothing, but has that translated? Have you got some conversions because of that?
Yeah, like we had almost 1,000 in 3 days come on board. I was like, oh, yes, so it's very exciting.
So you felt that you've had the product, you didn't need to change anything, it's just that you didn't have the connection to the market.
Correct.
And for you, that the barrier there was money?
The barrier was money.
But you found a way to overcome that by using social media.
Yes, and in fact, using social media meant one of my users came on board and invested in Kaboose and is doing some of the marketing now as well, so it's great because the community have got in touch. And over the last probably week, I've had software people, product people, can we come and help you? Can we come and work for Kaboose? So it's a bit of a different story to last year.
I love that. I love that for you. My gay friends would say, don't be sarcastic. So, but I wasn't being sarcastic. You know? Danielle, what's your story?
Yeah, so I'm the CEO and founder of Karista, and we're a tech company that assists people with disabilities connect with service providers. But really what we do in the work that we do is understand what sort of outcomes and goals people have and help them reach those goals. In our earlier days, so about 5 years ago, we were using a lot of customer service people to do that work, and we developed what's called internally a guided conversation. And it is actually about opening up and asking open questions and learning about people and learning what they want to achieve from whatever they're asking us. So we're really about getting outcomes for people. Recently we've AI'd that conversation, and from everything that we've learned, we've taken over 70,000 requests. Actually, we're close to 80,000 requests from people with autism or autistic people and their parents mainly. So it's mainly mums that come to us, of people who have been diagnosed pretty early with autism. They generally come in about 6, 7, 8 years old. Usually something's happened at school. We help them get an assessment, and then they get funding through the NDIS, and then we connect them with a range of services, not based on what they ask for necessarily because of this conversation that we have and focus on outcomes, but based on what we know. A lot of the data we've collected are the like person's outcomes that they've achieved, and triage them into the right services and areas that help them get those outcomes.
So did this perfect pitch come naturally to you? Was it always as easy at the beginning, or is that something that you've developed because the business gave you that confidence as it was becoming bigger?
So I think what I've done today is explain it a lot differently to how I would explain it to others, and it's something that we might talk about in this session. When you're an entrepreneur, you have to tailor your conversation to different people and different audiences. So I have a different conversation with mum every day in customer service when I still do the phones, etc., versus an investor, versus the community, versus the person with a disability, and all different types. When we're talking about an autistic person, I might tailor the conversation based on the outcomes they want to achieve, like I mentioned before, or, you know, sometimes the diagnosis does make it easier for us to have that connection. There's a difference between a high-functioning autism level 2 ADHD versus level 3 or level 1, etc. So I think what I've mastered over time is the ability to be able to, you know, speak to different target audiences.
Understand their marketing personas, in essence, if we're going to use business talk, and then having that narrative that applies to each one of those. Jen, what's your experience and your business and your experience in that space?
Yeah, sure. So I'm an autistic ADHD individual, and so my partner and son. Thank you. And look, I'm also the CEO and founder of a startup called Heartful, and Heartful is actually a short-term accommodation booking marketplace with a focus on accessibility and sustainability. So we're kind of like an ethical version of Airbnb, I guess. To be quite honest,
Airbnb.
That's right. So, and look, we're still an early stage business, so we are actually launching in about a month's time, after about 18 months of work. So it's been quite a long journey to get to where we've gotten to today. And we've gone ahead and raised funds along that way. We did a crowdfund last year and managed to raise $132,000, so that was great. And all of that's gone into the design and branding and build of the platform, which is, as I said, is about to launch in a month or so's time. So we're now at the exciting sort of point of the business after so much, you know, hard work.
Firstly, congratulations to get to that point. I know, like, sometimes you'd give up halfway.
Yes, and I was very tempted to. Believe me, it's been really. There's been some fantastic moments, but also some very grueling. A lot of late nights.
What are some of the barriers for you as an autistic entrepreneur in this space? And what are some of the advantages that you may have had in designing a solution, having a lived experience understanding?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the biggest thing that I've noticed in terms of what I'm bringing to the equation as an autistic person is that real sense of empathy. So it's really about what do these users want, and what have I experienced as both a host and a guest of short-term accommodation as well. And, you know, we're looking at things through a completely different lens. I mean, in terms of just the actual design of the platform, the design will be fully what we call WCAG AA compliant. So it will be an accessible website itself, which is great. But we're also looking at having features for all sorts of different disabilities, including the neurodivergent community. So things like, you know, the ability to read listings with bionic text, downloadable social stories, you know, profiling different properties that might be good in terms of sensory needs, those sorts of things. So I think, that's probably the strongest thing that I've, brought to the table.
Just by listening to you, I just realized that we need a downloadable text version of the website for ourselves. So thank you for sharing that. So I was talking to in a TikTok conversation yesterday that it was a Greek TikTok conversation about autism, so very different to the neuroaffirming conversations that we have in Australia. And it was a combative conversation with a mother, and it was a neurotypical practitioner. And at that point, I understood, and I knew that, but it was just it made meaning that somebody neurotypical may really, really, really want to help, that somebody non-autistic. So in that point, how do you design a solution for autistic people? But how do you include that lived experience in the design process?
Look, at the start, it was really difficult because I think one of the challenges I have probably is A, asking for help, and B, just being able to talk, onto TikTok and talk, whenever, lives and things like that. So the way I've done it is probably more of a consultation, individual one-on-ones. We have a feedback tribe in Kaboose now, and it's really great because people go in and they say, I'd like to see, at messaging, and I'd like to see job matching, and I'd like to see the mentoring, or whatever it is. So they go into the actual tribe and post things, and then people will come directly and start having conversations, which I think, it's great. For me, it's more about that one-on-one conversation where I can really get to know the person. And I think for something like Kaboose, we really need the lived experience. So, and I think when you've met, and the classic, sort of saying, you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism, the whole community needs something different, and we're sort of trying to support neurodiversity across the board. So, the needs are just really different. So being able to actually tap into that is really important.
Danielle?
Yeah, so I guess over time, because we've been out and launched for a number of years now, we've been listening to a whole heap of feedback along the way. Co-design is a big one for us, and we've got some projects coming up where we're, involving people in the design of actually tracking outcomes, not just outcomes, but also tracking the time and stress for family members and those that are, trying to get those outcomes, particularly for little ones. So co-design is really important. I think no matter who your target audience is, you have to keep listening to that feedback. We're really good listeners. We talk to every single person that puts a request through to Karista. So while we use the AI product, we actually use it internally to have conversations. So it's absolutely important. What we know and what we discovered pretty quickly in our journey was, whilst it is mum usually that is, making the request, they're usually undiagnosed neurodiverse people. We've had to navigate through that very clearly, and the best way to do it is in every single conversation we're recording new pieces of feedback, and we all sit in a room. We do come into the office quite a bit, and we talk about that and troubleshoot, etc. So it's been a big part of what we've done.
Wearing your professional hat, what are some of the things that come to mind, and what's a question that you would have for each one of our panelists?
So just following on this sort of co-design thread, it's actually something that in so many startups that I'm seeing at the moment, I'm encouraging people to set up co-design subcommittees effectively that feed into whatever they're doing. This is not just sort of in the TISM tech space, but in all sorts of space, to make sure that we're getting, diverse thought feeding into the design of the technology solutions of today and tomorrow. So, particularly when it comes to AI, I'm meeting with a lot of really disruptive, innovative AI startups at the moment, and I'm basically being pretty bossy and telling them they need to pull together a co-design committee, and that needs to be made up of really diverse folks who are feeding into that, because I'll be damned if we're going to stand by and let AI roll out and take over our lives without having, lots of people feed into that process.
If anyone can understand AI, really. I think it's the literal brains of autistic people.
Yeah, well, arguably, yeah, we're already in the co-design of a lot of what's going on there. But, you know, even to the point of all these sort of sub-profiles and different presentations of the spectrum, making, if you are in the TISM tech space, making sure that it's not just, you know, your vision of things, that it is bringing in others with those different sub-profiles and different, you know, presentations to make sure that they're reflected as well, so that ultimately the you know, the whole community kind of benefits.
Any questions?
Questions? You mean like sort of investor style questions, or what kind of
Any
questions?
questions you would like to ask as part of this discussion?
Well, I guess my big thing, again, I'm the big vision, big picture sort of person. So, you know, where do you see what you're doing rolling out? I'm assuming this is a global play, and then how do you put a defensive moat around what you're doing with regard to the Airbnbs of this world? And they're very slow waking up to the fact that the disability community is huge, and actually that they should be thinking about this and doing something in that space as well. Or is it ultimately an exit strategy and they buy you? Yeah.
That's a big question. Yeah, look, just in terms of the defensibility, I think, look, it's, to me, it's always absolutely amazing that I mean, accessible travel in particular is the fastest growing travel sector or tourism sector in Australia and arguably the world right now. And so I'm always so surprised when platforms like Airbnb, for instance, they've done some fairly tokenistic sort of stuff, but they haven't done anything that I think is really significant. And so we are aiming to step into that space and really own that space. But I think in doing that, you know, just to talk about the co-design sort of aspect for a moment too, one of the things that we did before we actually even started the design of the platform was we went out and interviewed the disabled community about exactly what they wanted from a platform like this, and also what their kind of pain points were, to use that well-worn phrase, you know, using platforms like Airbnb and Stays and some of the Booking.com and some of those other massive sites. And that has really directly informed what we've built. And I see that as being a kind of a key point of defensibility as well, because we've, you know, gone out and consulted that community. We'll see how things go. We're certainly looking to launch in Australia first and foremost and conquer that space first. Before we've got to crawl before we walk, but we're hoping to broaden the landscape overseas.
I'm not selling. Danielle, if we were to apply this question to your app, what's the answer?
Yeah, so we're on a mission to impact 1 million people by the end of 2025. What we know is that when we connect one person with services and we get the right outcomes, there's another 9 people on average: mum, dad, brother, sister, friends, family, etc. So we're definitely on our way. That's the goal for end 2025. There's a little bit of a new one floating around, about 100 million people eventually. So we definitely see that this will go global. We're lucky enough to be funded. We're going out for another raise, but we're pretty much, you know, at the point where we're breaking even. Again, it's all about awareness. The scalability will come with more money, more support. And we're lucky in this country we have the NDIS, and I think you're sitting on a gold mine. You know, the NDIS will fund those short-term accommodations, which I think is absolutely amazing. But we are only able to leverage it as much as we produce the right types of products and services for the neurodiverse community. Otherwise, it's all wasted money. So that's why Airbnb versus your product, like there's you know, they're polar, they're worlds apart. From what we can see, and that focus, I think, will help the neurodiverse community thrive. It's just like a snowball effect. We're just seeing more and more people, become involved in the community and accessing services and accessing accommodation, becoming more independent, and it's just becoming a much better place.
Michelle?
We're on a mission to create a global thriving community. So it's a community first, and then building from that, mentors, jobs, and potentially, you know, housemate matching or other type activities.
So you're not selling either?
Not selling, no. But I would like an investor. Just putting that out there.
If anyone's hearing, yeah.
If anyone is listening, that's really, what's holding us back at the moment, because you can see there's a need for it. The community are telling us they want something like Kaboose, and we are about community first. We're not a dating app, and there's plenty of those. But we do need...
Well, if it happens, it happens.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's right. Yes, and that's what I
And then we have accommodation.
Yes, that's right. Yes, they can move through the services.
So any questions for our panel?
I have a question about marketing for this audience, because context, I've got an app as well that's helping ADHD people to stay in hyperfocus.
Tell us about the app, because I must share here that you were with us last year. So I'd love to also know where you're at and give us a pitch, and then we'll go to the question about marketing. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So the idea of the app is that it helps block distractions. So you tell it, for the next hour, I'm trying to write my report. And then it uses AI to check whether the website that you just opened is a rabbit hole or whether it's actually something that you want to be using. So we're going okay. We went through the Remarkable Accelerator last year, which is an excellent program for disability tech entrepreneurs. We've got now 250 paying users. We've got a contract with a university. But the point I'm at right now is we're getting feedback that we should be doing, say, Facebook ads. And I feel very torn about that, because if I run an ad, which is targeting the ADHD demographic, and if I put a Facebook pixel on my website, which I don't want to do, then Meta then knows, hey, that person just clicked on an ad that's about ADHD. They went to my website. That probably then feeds into the Meta profile about that person. How do you plan to deal with that? Even TikTok, I imagine as well, that someone who is watching your videos and then goes onto your website, that's basically confirmation that person is autistic. How do you deal with it?
Maybe write, this is an ad for ADHDers, but we're also going to put a chair so Facebook thinks we're selling furniture.
I think that's very true. Like, if you're people clicking through, you're right, and that's how the algorithm is working. And I'm very anti-algorithms for very personal reasons around eating disorders and things like that. But I guess in terms of marketing, like, I've also, with Kaboose, people have said, "Oh, why don't you put ads in there?" And I'm like, but I don't really want to be at the mercy of advertising just for the sake of advertising to the community. I want it to be really focused, and so I would rather stay small and grow sustainably than rush out and get a whole bunch of advertising just to satisfy like a funding thing. I think it will come, but it might just take a bit longer. That's my view.
Yeah, I wouldn't do Facebook advertising, but it's like we've done a lot of Facebook advertising and ditched it completely. It's not a good channel. I find that people are kind of browsing on Facebook, but the campaigns we run on Google and Bing, they actually attract, they're people looking to acquire, but that's a bit boring. What I would say is, I've been funded, so we've thrown a whole lot of money in. We spend about $100,000 a month on Google Ads and things like that, and we've perfected the string sentences, so we've got IP over time. What I would recommend for you is the NDIS space is massive, and there's lots of referrers in that space, and there's access to those referrers like support coordinators, plan managers, even the NDIS officers. They welcome you with open arms, and you can use the assistive technology core funds for your type of product. So that could give you quite a bit of exposure. Sorry to be very specific, but I couldn't help myself. I'm a marketer, but so I couldn't help address that. But I think, sadly, with startups, the Facebook advertising and things like that, it might work for some, but you've got to test it very quickly and go very deep and really focused and do a bit A/B testing, which you need money for, of course. But there's some fantastic referrers out there, which I think if you can get into that community and spread the word, especially in the NDIS space, it's huge.
Also, every point in time in terms of how social media platforms operate is different. Like 3 years ago, Meta advertising used to work really well. Now it doesn't, because of all the privacy restrictions and the Apple controls on the iPhones. So whatever solution you find today, it won't be the same tomorrow. So we built Just Gold on storytelling We didn't pay any money on SEO or SMO, but the investment was in community engagement and then building a really beautiful story, and that kind of traveled. Obviously, this also requires investment. So money kind of talks, but the personal brand is where you might be able to invest in yourself, like having a really strong LinkedIn, writing really good articles, making that work for you, because in essence, you are building two brands. You're building Jeremy, the founder, and you're building also your app brand. So they are symbiotic. This was my PhD topic. So like there's two brands there that you're working with. So at some point, you're going to have to split them if you really want to grow. But if you don't have money, you might use yourself as a Trojan horse to community or VC. And that's when masking and wearing costumes or whatever becomes really important, because once you put yourself out there, you're going to need to be safe enough to be public facing, and also being always on narrative, and that narrative to be authentic enough for you not to have to think about it. So it's just a real journey, and it's a deep psychological journey as well, because branding is exactly that, understanding the soul of a product or service. But if you're doing it for yourself as a leader, that's even harder as a process. So, take care while you do that. So, Jen?
It's a really interesting position that you're in, and I'm looking at the same sort of things. I think with our platform, we'll be looking to prioritise word of mouth, that old-fashioned tactic, and also organic Google optimization, so SEO, really. They're the two kind of main marketing platforms for us. We may do some experimentation with Facebook and meta ads and so forth, but once again, I share the same concerns as everyone else on this panel, and have certainly had similar experiences myself. We're lucky in that we've set up an MVP 2 years ago, and we're going into this launch with a community of hosts already established. So that's a huge hurdle that we've already jumped. So I'm very grateful for that. But it's an interesting playing field.
As we're closing the session, and we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Ru, and then I'll close the day. What's a piece of advice that you have to give to somebody that just starts today with a great idea? Or maybe the idea is not great, but what's the advice?
Look, I think you have to, if it's a passion and it's something that you feel really passionate about, I think that's the most important thing. I think I see a lot of founders out there that are looking for ideas, which I always find that quite strange.
I'll give you ideas and give me the money.
It's like, well, if you're not passionate about it, it's actually not really going to succeed at the end of the day. So I think that's the key thing, to make sure that you are genuinely fired up about something. Just put your hat in the ring, have a go. There's really nothing to lose. You'll be back at square one potentially if it doesn't work out, but so be it.
Danielle?
I would say my biggest learning is get used to rejection. So it's a numbers game. So, going out for investment and things like that, don't worry about the no's, just keep going. Like, do 200 pitches, get the money, do your experimentation, etc. Be resilient, keep going. You'll get there in the end. I think the kind of being prepared to put yourself out there, like you had mentioned before, around, your personal brand, being super focused, just being able to handle that rejection.
Michelle?
Well, a lot covered already around resilience and getting used to the no's. I'm still getting used to that. But also staying focused. Like when you're pitching, you get a lot of investors with a lot of ideas. Oh, well, you could do this, or, you could do that. And meanwhile, they don't actually know the community. So it's really staying focused on your idea and listening to the actual audience rather than the people who are trying to distract you.
Yeah, all such good comments. I think just following on from what Jen was saying, I would just encourage the autistic community to recognise that our ability to absolutely hyper-focus in the context of entrepreneurship is a goddamn blessing. And as an investor, I'm always sitting there going, can this person execute, and will they go the distance? Because honestly, a founder relationship with the co-founder has to last longer than the average marriage. And, you know, to actually take something through to exit, or even just through to, you know, being a profitable business that you can, you know, eke out a living through, you're going to have to be deeply connected to that thing in some way. And so, you know, for the autistic community, I think finding that thing that you're prepared to keep going at is a beautiful thing. And so, you know, just jump in and do it.
And thank you. And thanks to everyone for really going the distance today. 5 panels, 2 workshops, and 7 more panels tomorrow in Sydney. This was the Autistic Pride Day Symposium in Melbourne in 2024, if you're watching in 25. I'm Kyriakos Gold. Thank you so much for staying with us. We'll see you tomorrow in Sydney.